The first thing she noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind guests paid for, but the awkward, hollow quiet that followed him everywhere, like the air itself wasn't sure what to do when he entered the lobby. It was just past 9 in the evening, that slow hour when the hotel lights dimmed and the marble floors reflected tired faces. Amelia stood behind the reception desk, smoothing the edge of a registration card with her thumb, already counting the minutes until her shift ended. That was when he walked in. No entourage. No designer luggage. No confidence. Just a man in a charcoal coat, slightly worn at the cuffs, carrying a single leather bag that looked older than the building itself. He paused just inside the revolving door, glancing around as though he wasn't certain he belonged there. Amelia offered her professional smile. She had mastered it, warm but distant, kind but efficient. "Good evening, sir. How may I help you?" He approached slowly, eyes lingering on the chandelier, the polished brass, the staff moving in quiet coordination. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, low, almost apologetic. "I have a reservation. Daniel Wright." She typed the name, expecting the usual, standard room, 1 night, maybe 2. But her fingers froze. Penthouse suite. Extended stay. No price listed. Her eyes flicked up instinctively, but he was already looking away, studying a framed photograph of the hotel from decades earlier. "I'll just need your ID, please," she said, masking her confusion. He handed it over without hesitation. Daniel Wright. Age, 42. Address, blank. No corporate title. No company name. Nothing remarkable at all. As she returned the card, she smiled again. "Will you be needing assistance with your luggage?" He glanced down at his single bag and shook his head. "No, thank you. I travel light." Something about the way he said it made her pause. Not proud. Not defensive. Just factual. Over the next few days, he became a quiet constant. He always left early, returned late. He never ordered room service, never used the spa, never requested anything extra. When other guests demanded upgrades and complained about pillows, Daniel Wright waited patiently at the edge of the lobby, nodding politely when she finally noticed him. Sometimes he sat in the corner armchair with a book, the same one every time, its spine creased and softened by use. Sometimes he simply watched people pass, as though he were observing life rather than participating in it. Amelia began bringing him coffee without asking. Black. No sugar. The first time, he looked genuinely surprised. "You remembered," he said. She shrugged lightly. "It's part of the job." But it wasn't. She forgot preferences all the time. They began talking in fragments. Small, unimportant things. The weather. The city. How strange hotels felt when you stayed too long. "They are like borrowed lives," he once said, staring at the revolving door. "You live in them, but they never belong to you." She laughed softly. "That's a sad way to look at it." "Honest," he corrected gently. One evening, long after her shift officially ended, she found him still sitting there, coat folded neatly beside him. "You're working late," he observed. "So are you," she replied. He smiled then, not the polite curve of lips he usually wore, but something real, something that reached his eyes. "Perhaps," he said, "but I own my time." The words lingered with her long after she walked home. The other staff barely noticed him. To them, he was just another solitary guest, quiet, invisible, easy. The kind management appreciated because he never caused trouble. That was why the meeting came as such a shock. The entire staff was summoned to the conference room one morning. Management stood stiffly at the front, expressions unusually tense. Amelia slipped into her seat, heart thudding with vague unease. "We have an important announcement," the general manager began. "The owner of the hotel will be joining us today." A murmur rippled through the room. "Owner?" Amelia frowned. She had worked here for 3 years and had never once seen the owner. Just a distant name attached to policies and emails. The door at the back of the room opened. Footsteps, unhurried. Familiar. Her breath caught. Daniel Wright walked in, no charcoal coat this time, but the same calm presence, the same quiet gravity. He met her eyes for just a fraction of a second, long enough for recognition to spark, long enough for the world to tilt. And then he turned to face the room. "I apologize for not introducing myself sooner," he said evenly. "I wanted to understand this place before reminding everyone who it belongs to." Amelia's hands trembled in her lap. The lonely man from the lobby. The silent guest. The one she brought coffee to out of habit, not obligation. Owned the entire hotel. And as his gaze returned to her, soft and unreadable, she realized with a sudden, sinking certainty. He hadn't been watching the hotel at all. He had been watching her. The room felt smaller than it had moments before, as if the walls themselves had leaned in to listen. Amelia barely heard the rest of the meeting. Words like vision, standards, and future direction floated past her without meaning. All she could focus on was the way Daniel stood at the front, hands relaxed, posture effortless, nothing like the quiet man who used to sit in the corner armchair with a book he never seemed to finish. When the meeting ended, staff rose quickly, buzzing with speculation. Some whispered excitedly. Others nervously adjusted their uniforms, suddenly conscious of every past complaint, every shortcut taken. Amelia remained seated, her pulse loud in her ears. He waited. She noticed that before she noticed anything else. Only when the room had emptied did he walk toward her. Not with authority. Not with entitlement. With the same unhurried steps she had seen a dozen times in the lobby. "You look like you're deciding whether to run," he said softly. She stood too quickly, chair scraping against the floor. "You," her voice faltered. "You never said." "No," he agreed. "I didn't." "Why?" The word came out sharper than she intended. He studied her for a moment, as though choosing honesty over comfort. "Because the truth changes how people speak to you. How they look at you." "I wanted to be unfiltered." She crossed her arms, a defensive reflex she hadn't realized she'd learned. "So I was part of an experiment." His brow furrowed. "No. You were the exception." That unsettled her more than the lie of omission. They walked back toward the lobby together, the familiar space suddenly unfamiliar. Staff straightened when they saw him now, greetings overly formal, smiles stretched tight. Amelia felt the shift like a physical pressure. At the desk, she stopped. "So all this time," she said quietly, "you were listening, watching, judging." "Yes," he replied simply. Then, after a pause, "and learning." She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "About the hotel?" "About people," he said, his gaze steady on hers. "About who treats others kindly when there's nothing to gain." Her throat tightened. She looked away first. Days passed, but the balance never returned to normal. Daniel, Mr. Wright, as everyone now called him, was suddenly everywhere. Reviewing reports. Speaking with department heads. Walking the halls with quiet authority. And yet, with Amelia, nothing changed. He still accepted coffee from her hand. Still asked how her day had been. Still listened, really listened, when she spoke. That somehow made it harder. One evening, she found him in the lobby again. The armchair empty now, his book resting untouched on the table. "You don't sit there anymore," she observed. "It doesn't feel the same," he said. "People notice me now." She hesitated. "Did you want that?" He smiled faintly. "Ownership is loud, even when you're silent." They walked together toward the windows overlooking the city. Lights shimmered below, lives unfolding far beyond the glass. "You could have corrected me," she said. "Any time I treated you like just another guest." "I liked how you treated me," he replied. "You were never impressed. Never afraid." She laughed bitterly. "I am now." He turned to her then, fully. "Don't be." "How can I not?" she asked. "You own my workplace. My schedule. My future, whether you mean to or not." "That's not how I see it," he said. "But it is how it is," she countered. Silence stretched between them, thick with things neither dared to name. The next week, rumors began. Some said the owner had taken a special interest in the front desk. Others whispered about promotions, favoritism, hidden agendas. Amelia felt every glance like a question mark pressed into her back. She confronted him one night in his office, a place she had never imagined entering before. "This has to stop," she said, hands clenched at her sides. "People are talking." "They always do," he replied calmly. "Not like this." She met his eyes. "I won't be the reason they doubt your leadership." His expression softened, but there was steel beneath it. "And what about what you want?" She swallowed. "That doesn't matter." "It does to me," he said quietly. The admission hung between them, fragile and dangerous. She took a step back. "You don't get to say that." "Not after pretending to be someone else." "I was always myself," he said. just not introduced properly. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, grounding her. She exhaled slowly. I need space. He nodded without argument. Take all the time you need. But space didn't bring clarity. It brought memories, shared glances, unguarded laughter, moments that now felt loaded with meaning. She wondered how much had been real, how much had been calculated. Then came the letter, a formal envelope waiting at her desk, bearing the hotel's crest. Inside, a single page. A proposal for a new role. A department created specifically for guest experience. Her ideas, her observations, written back to her in careful, precise language. At the bottom, a handwritten note. This has nothing to do with how I feel about you. It has everything to do with how you see people. She stared at the words, heart pounding. From across the lobby, she felt his presence before she saw him. He wasn't watching her this time. He was waiting. Amelia folded the letter carefully and slipped it back into the envelope, her fingers unsteady. The lobby felt louder than usual, heels clicking, suitcases rolling, voices overlapping, yet all she could hear was the echo of his words in her mind. He was waiting. Not standing over her desk. Not watching from a distance. Just there, near the window, hands in his pockets, gaze turned outward toward the city as though he were giving her room to breathe. She approached slowly. I read it, she said. I thought you might, he replied without turning. She stood beside him, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his presence. Everyone's going to assume that you earned it, he finished. Or that you didn't. Her jaw tightened. You know what I mean. He turned then, leaning lightly against the marble ledge. Perception is a fragile thing. I can't control it. But I won't let it dictate what's right. And if what's right costs me respect, she asked. He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was lower. Then I failed you. That startled her. Owners didn't speak like that. Men with power didn't frame things as personal failures. She studied him. The faint lines near his eyes, the way his shoulders carried both ease and weight. Why me? She asked quietly. He considered the question as though it deserved care. Because you notice what others overlook. You speak to people as if their stories matter. You don't perform kindness, you live it. Her chest tightened. You saw all that from a lobby chair. I saw it because I was invisible, he said. And when people think you don't matter, they show you exactly who they are. They stood there, the unspoken threading itself between them. I don't want special treatment, she said at last. You won't get it, he replied. She raised an eyebrow. You'll get responsibility, he corrected. And expectations. Higher ones. She let out a small, shaky laugh. That's not comforting. It's honest. Days turned into weeks. Amelia accepted the role, cautiously, deliberately. The announcement was made without flourish, framed around guest satisfaction metrics and internal restructuring. Still, eyes followed her everywhere. Some colleagues congratulated her warmly. Others smiled with thin lips. She worked harder than she ever had. She arrived early, stayed late, listened endlessly. She redesigned feedback systems, retrained staff, reimagined small moments most guests never consciously noticed, the greeting, the pause, the farewell. Slowly, results followed. So did the silence. Daniel kept his distance in public. No lingering conversations. No shared coffees. In meetings, he addressed her formally, professionally, never once letting familiarity slip. Privately, they didn't speak at all. That hurt more than she expected. One evening, months later, she stood alone in the lobby after closing, lights dimmed low. The armchair still sat in its corner, untouched. On impulse, she picked up the old book Daniel had once read and opened it. Notes filled the margins. Underlined sentences. Questions scribbled in neat handwriting. This place is full of people pretending they don't need each other. She closed the book, heart pounding. You found it. She turned. He stood a few steps away, coat over his arm, expression unreadable. You left it, she said. I hoped you'd see it, he replied. She held it out to him. You were never really reading, were you? He took the book gently. I was learning how to stay quiet. They stood in the familiar hush, the space between them charged but careful. You've done remarkable things, he said. The staff morale is up. Guest returns have increased. She nodded. That's the job. And how are you? he asked softly. The question caught her off guard. Tired, she admitted. But proud. He smiled at that, genuine and warm. I'm glad, he said. Then, after a beat, I've missed talking to you. Her breath hitched. You chose not to. I chose not to complicate your success, he said. Power already tilts the ground. I didn't want to make it uneven. She took a step closer. You don't get to decide that alone. He met her gaze, something unguarded flickering there. Then tell me what you want. She hesitated, the weight of honesty pressing down. I want to be seen for who I am, not who I know. You are, he said immediately. By me. By others too, even if they don't say it. And you? She asked quietly. What do you want? He looked away briefly, then back at her. To stop pretending that distance is the same as respect. The air between them tightened. Footsteps echoed faintly from a corridor, a reminder of reality, of roles, of consequences. I don't know what this means, she said. Neither do I, he replied. But I know what it doesn't mean. What? It doesn't mean we go back to pretending we don't feel anything. Her heart hammered. She searched his face for certainty, for pressure, for expectation, and found none. Just patience. Then we go slowly, she said. He nodded. As slowly as you need. Outside, the city pulsed on, unaware. Inside, the hotel held its breath, full of borrowed lives and quiet truths, as two people stood at the edge of something neither of them could yet name. The first thing Amelia noticed was how carefully he listened. Not as an owner weighing risks or a man chasing possibility, but as someone trying to understand the shape of another person's boundaries. That alone steadied her. They began with small things. A conversation over coffee in the staff dining room at dawn, long before the lobby stirred to life. A walk through the corridors after midnight, when the hotel exhaled and became itself again. Soft footsteps, muted lights, the faint hum of machines keeping everything alive. They spoke about work first. Always work. About the invisible labor of hospitality. About how exhaustion could wear a smile into something brittle. About guests who arrived carrying grief instead of luggage. You see them, he said once, as they paused beside a window overlooking the service entrance. Not just their reservation numbers. She shrugged. Someone has to. And you chose to, he replied. That's the difference. Slowly, carefully, they spoke about other things. He told her about his father, who had bought the hotel decades ago, not as an investment but as a refuge. A place to disappear when the world became too loud. How ownership had passed to him like a responsibility he hadn't asked for but couldn't refuse. I stayed away for years, he admitted. I told myself I was free. And were you? She asked. No, he said. I was just absent. She told him about her mother, who cleaned offices at night so Amelia could attend university during the day. About learning early that dignity often came wrapped in exhaustion. About why she never looked down on anyone who worked quietly. Their lives overlapped in unexpected ways, like two separate maps suddenly laid on top of each other. Still, nothing happened. No stolen touches. No whispered confessions. The restraint itself became a language, one built on mutual trust rather than urgency. Then, one afternoon, a guest collapsed in the lobby. It happened fast, a sharp sound, a body crumpling, a ripple of panic. Amelia moved without thinking, kneeling beside the man, calling for medical assistance, guiding staff with a steadiness that surprised even her. Daniel stood back, watching, not as an owner, not as a man in control, but as someone witnessing competence under pressure. Later, after the ambulance left and calm returned, he found her in the back office, hands still trembling slightly. You were extraordinary, he said. She exhaled shakily. I was doing my job. No, he replied. You were doing what you are. The words settled into her, warm and grounding. That evening, as rain streaked the windows and the city blurred into reflection, they stood together near the entrance, watching guests hurry inside, shaking off the cold. Do you ever regret telling me? She asked suddenly. He considered it. Regret what? Who you really were. He shook his head. It was the first honest thing I'd done here. And everything after. He met her eyes. That's been honest too. She hesitated, then said, I'm afraid. He nodded. So am I. The admission didn't weaken him. It humanized him. Afraid of what? He asked gently. That one day, she said, people will say I rose because of you. That no matter how well I do, my work will always be questioned. And if they do? He asked. She swallowed. I don't know if I'm strong enough to carry that forever. He stepped closer, not touching, just near enough to be felt. Then let me carry my share. You can't, she said softly. That's the problem. He was silent for a long moment. Then, I can step back. Her heart clenched. Is that what you want? No, he said immediately. But wanting something doesn't make it right. She closed her eyes briefly, gathering herself. When she opened them, her voice was steady. I don't want to be protected. I want to be trusted. His expression softened. Then tell me what trust looks like to you. It looks like transparency, she said. No secrets. No special rooms we disappear into. No whispers. He nodded slowly. Agreed. And if this, whatever this is, ever becomes a distraction to the people we lead, she continued, we stop. He accepted that without protest. Agreed. The rain eased outside, the city lights sharpening again. Weeks passed. The hotel thrived. So did the distance they maintained in public, and the closeness they nurtured in quiet conversations, honest debates, shared moments of understanding. People noticed the change in the atmosphere before they noticed anything else. The place felt warmer, more human. One evening, after a long day, Amelia stood alone in the penthouse corridor, reviewing a renovation plan. She hadn't realized he was there until he spoke. You've turned this place into something my father would have loved, Daniel said. She smiled faintly. I hope so. He believed hotels should hold people when life lets go, he added. She looked at him then. And do you believe that? I do now, he said. They stood in silence, the city stretched beneath them like a promise. For the first time, the question wasn't whether their lives could intersect, but whether they were already inseparable in ways neither had planned. And somewhere between the borrowed lives of strangers and the quiet truth they shared, the hotel continued to breathe, unaware that its greatest transformation was still unfolding. The change did not arrive with an announcement. It came quietly, the way all lasting things do. Guests felt it before they could name it. Staff sensed it in the steadier rhythm of their days, in the way concerns were met with listening rather than dismissal. The hotel no longer felt like a machine designed to impress, it felt like a place that remembered you. And at the center of it all stood Amelia. Not elevated, not hidden, not protected, but visible. She spoke in meetings with calm authority. She challenged decisions when they didn't serve people. She defended her staff with the same resolve she once used to defend strangers at the front desk. Slowly, unmistakably, respect followed her, not borrowed, not gifted, but earned in full view of everyone. Daniel watched from the margins he had chosen for himself. He signed fewer directives, attended fewer ceremonial events. Instead, he listened. He learned. He allowed the hotel to become something shaped not by ownership, but by care. One evening, during the hotel's anniversary gala, the ballroom shimmered with light and music. Investors mingled. Press cameras flashed. Speeches echoed with polished praise. Amelia stood near the back, observing as she always had, when Daniel took the stage. He spoke briefly. No grand claims. No numbers meant to impress. This building, he said, has survived because of the people who carry it every day, often unseen. Tonight isn't about celebrating ownership. It's about honoring stewardship. He paused, then added, some leaders stand at the top. Others stand where the work is done. His eyes found Amelia's across the room. For the first time, he continued, this hotel is led by someone who understands that hospitality isn't service, it's respect. Applause filled the space, rising not from obligation, but recognition. Amelia didn't smile. She breathed. After the gala, long after the guests had gone, she stood alone in the lobby, heels in hand, exhaustion settling into her bones. The chandelier lights were dimmed, the marble floors quiet once more. Daniel joined her without ceremony. You didn't tell them my name, she said. I didn't need to, he replied. They already know it. She looked at him then, not as an owner, not as a man waiting, but as someone who had walked beside her without trying to lead her path. I'm leaving, she said softly. His breath caught, just slightly. Leaving the hotel? For a while, she clarified. I've been invited to consult on a project overseas.
Short term.
They want to build something like this from the ground up. He nodded, absorbing the words with the same care he gave everything else. You should go.
I was afraid you'd say that, she admitted. And I'd be wrong if I didn't, he replied.
Silence stretched, tender and full.
I won't disappear, she said.
And I won't belong to you when I return.
A faint smile touched his lips.
I wouldn't want you to. When she left weeks later, there was no farewell gathering, no dramatic goodbye. Just a quiet mourning, a shared look, and an understanding that neither of them needed promises to stay connected.
Time passed.
The hotel evolved. Amelia's work abroad reshaped spaces, cultures, expectations. Daniel's leadership became known not for visibility, but for integrity. Years later, a young woman stood behind the reception desk on her first day, nervous hands smoothing a registration card. A man entered the lobby alone, carrying a single worn leather bag. He paused, uncertain.
She smiled at him, warm and unguarded. Good evening, sir.
Welcome. He returned the smile, something old and familiar in his eyes. From the upper level, Amelia watched quietly, a soft understanding settling in her chest.
Hotels were still borrowed lives.
But some truth stayed. And the greatest legacy was never ownership, it was the way people were seen when they believed no one was watching.